My film is not a movie.
Mon film n'est pas une film. C'est pas du cinéma.
My film is not about Vietnam.
C'est pas au sujet du Vietnam.
It is Vietnam.
C'est le Vietnam.
It's what it was really like. It was crazy.
C'était comment était Vietnam réellement, vraiment. C'était fou.
And the way we made it was very much like the way the Americans were in Vietnam. We were in the jungle.
On était au jungle.
There were too many of us.
On était de trop dans l'équipe.
We had access to too much money.
On avait accès à trop d'argent.
Too much equipment.
Trop d'équipement.
And little by little we went insane.
Et peu à peu, on est devenu.
Near the end of Apocalypse Now, a cow is filmed being sacrificed by the local tribespeople. Tribespeople that Colonel Kurtz had turned into his own private army. The scene is brutal, ritualistic, and captivating. But ultimately, it has the razor edge of violence, real violence that cuts deep into you. I think it's because it is real. Art is real. It accentuates the horror. Years later, I came to learn that the tribespeople in the film are actual tribespeople. It turned out to be easier to hire an honest-to-God indigenous tribe in the middle of a dense jungle in the Philippines than it was to hire actors and bring them along. The tribe had sacrificed many animals during production, though it was only after Eleanor Coppola, a documentary filmmaker, had witnessed one of them that she told Francis Coppola, the director and her husband, to include it in the film. After learning this and watching the making of documentary, I've come to understand that Apocalypse Now, it's not just real, it's authentic. It's a genuine product of a harrowing odyssey built on the back of a real one that brought everyone who undertook it to the brink. Spec Ops: The Line is alright. It handles well enough, completely bearable for a 4-hour game. The characters are amazing, with Walker, the player's character, feeling exceptionally real. Still, it's not perfect. And while the story is incredible, a few moments undercut the point of it. Moments where your hands were forced one too many times, moments where you felt painfully aware that you're playing a game. The most egregious moment being that when you bomb civilians with white phosphorus, and then a few minutes later you're partaking in a ridiculous and over-the-top, on-the-rails shooter segment where you're manically firing a grenade launcher into vehicles, rebels and civilians, just because it's kind of cool to watch them explode. It's a very obvious flaw to point out, that a game portraying the horrors of war is uncomfortably comfortable with doling out massive ultra-violence for seemingly no other motive than fun. Art is fun. It's not a flaw that I really care to talk about either, because it's not particularly deep, and it's far too easy to attribute this sort of problem to top-down executive decision-making. Where Francis Coppola was able to stake both his reputation from the first two Godfathers, and more importantly several $1 million of his own money to maintain creative control over his project, I'm not too sure corporate America would be so happy to let Johnny First-Time have an unfiltered run at creating a AAA military shooter. In this case, Johnny First-Time is actually called Walt Williams, and is a pretty interesting person, having written a story for the game. We'll talk more about him in a bit. The moments you do get a choice in, however, are fantastic and grim. In any given situation, it's never made entirely clear what the best choice is, nor even if there is one, challenging years of ingrained heroism injected directly into your veins from playing industry-standard shooters. Suddenly, you aren't a hero. The transition feels over the top, but the effect it has on your actions is subtle. You, the player, change. When I started the game, I refused to shoot the civilians we came across until they started firing first. Even if they were firing out of fear, we were armed soldiers after all. It was still self-defense. That was the water off of my proverbial feathers. I was unruffled and still felt virtuous. But as the story progressed, as the choices got harder, no solution felt good. Worse still, I realised my choices were more and more informed by emotion. I'd stopped projecting my power fantasy onto Walker, and instead started to relate to him. Where he got angry, I got angry. Where he was spiralling, I was spiralling. Where he didn't know what to do, I was desperately searching for answers that wouldn't lose me or humanity. The artificial lines between sides had blown away in the sand, and only what I could readily grab hold onto was real. Towards the end of the game, after the over-the-top car chase sequence, I was presented with another choice, an act of mercy. Kill a man about to die a painful death anyway, to spare him his suffering, or walk away. As righteously as I had started out, the decision was frighteningly easy to make. I walked away, listening to his screams as he burned away into nothing. I had become judge, juror, and executioner. Not Walker, me. Art is self-reflection.
Walker! 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 Ah! Ah! Ah!
I like Spec Ops, and I do highly recommend it, on sale. But after finishing it and doing some research, I've been inspired to write something a little adjacent to a direct review. Both Apocalypse Now and Spec Ops take inspiration from Heart of Darkness, a story about a few men's descent into madness as they traverse through hell on earth to find a man who has lost his mind in a wicked embrace of the evil around him. All three stories embody a journey and a reflection of the self. All three reflect the guilt of man for the innocence they destroy. All three seek to make contemporary statements and challenge the media of the time. In an effort to capture that which Heart of Darkness reveals in a new medium, it is interesting then that both Apocalypse Now and Spec Ops should be so fraught with their own incredible challenges that embody their own odyssey. I started thinking about the film and the little tidbits I knew about it. How the cow really was killed on camera, that Martin Sheen had a heart attack during production, that his mental breakdown scene was him having an actual mental breakdown, that Lawrence Fishburne lied about his age and was merely 14 during filming.
And Larry Fishburne, age 14, will play Mr. Clean.
The whole thing's really fun. I mean, a war is fun. Shit. You can do anything you want to. That's why Vietnam must have been so much fun for the guys that were out there.
How old are you? 17.
Anyhow, do the right thing, stay out of the way of the bullets, and bring your honey home, all in one piece.
Just little bits of context that set it apart from other Hollywood blockbusters on Vietnam. It got me thinking about what it takes to make something like that. It got me thinking about what it takes to make anything, really. When reading more about Spec Ops, I found out it was in development hell for 5 years, and that the writer of it, Walt Williams, had written a book I've read in preparation for this piece, about his experiences in the industry. In the book, he takes an extremely masochistic stance on crunch culture, and how suffering is integral to good art. He has since reneged a little, condemning the practice, but clarifying its intoxicating nature for people like him, workhorses. The more I read, the more I watch, the more I learned, the more I came to ask myself, why is art sacrifice? Walt Williams himself said, "This is why it's important for writers to suffer, in one form or another. The good must be driven out until only the negative remains, jealousy, pettiness, desperation, and the greatest of these is desperation."
And I'm feeling like an idiot, having set in motion stuff that doesn't make any sense, that doesn't match. And yet I'm doing it, and the reason I'm doing it is out of desperation because I have no rational way to do it. What I have to admit is that I don't know what I'm doing.
Throughout his book, which I also highly recommend, it is very clear that Williams' relationship with his work is love-hate. He makes constant acknowledgements throughout, for himself and on behalf of other people, that sacrifice is vital to create something you are passionate about, that you really feel something about. It was hard as a creative to take that in, because whether I believed in it or not, the sentiment had already deeply moved me. I had suffered, and I had created. In fact, when I was suffering the most, I was creating as much and as often as I could. In a memoir called On Writing by Stephen King, he talked about his reliance on substances to push him along. He talked about when he stopped doing them, he found it hard to write, and initially worried that the writing came from such substances, or the duress they caused.
I'm like a voice crying out, saying, please, it's not working. Somebody get me off this. And nobody listens to me. Everyone says, yes, well, Francis works best in a crisis. I'm saying this is one crisis I'm not going to pull myself out of. There's almost anything I do to get out of this. I'm already thinking about what kind of sickness I can get. I was in the rain on the platform thinking if I just moved a little, I'd just fall 30 feet. It might kill me, but it might paralyze me or something. And then it would be a graceful way out.
He talked about how it comes to you, slowly, when you do it sober. You can learn it, and you can do it for yourself, and take all that power back. It was something that I recognised, but at the time I did not relate to, because I thought to myself, beyond a few drinks here and there, I do not abuse myself. So it never occurred to me that I could be so in love with being melancholy that I strive to be in that state as much as I can, because I achieve the most while I'm in it. I enjoy what I create when I'm sad, when I'm struggling, and when I enjoy it too much, it elevates me, and I become sad that I'm too happy and have nothing to overcome. I abuse my own dopamine receptors and idealize sadness. To be happy is easy. To become happy is incredibly hard, but to be sad is easy, and to become sad is even easier. Francis Coppola brought his wife and 3 young children with him to film Apocalypse Now in the Philippines. They weathered the military, explosions, the jungle, heat, rain, typhoons, heart attacks, drugs, breakdowns, and other things alike to support him. At the same time, he indulged in much of what the jungle had to offer, and seemingly, from the impression I had while watching the documentary, suffered some kind of ego death. While still a larger man, even after losing a lot of weight during filming, I felt he was just sinew, meat and flesh on cold bones who could flash you a smile and convince you to join him on his insane journey. He would sell you his vision, only there was nothing to hang on to. You could not pull him up, he would drag you down into the mud, but at least you would be there together.
The real phenomenon of being in that situation, being in the middle of that jungle and dealing with all the unfriendly elements that we were dealing with was part of what the movie was about. That was like the first directorial decision to put us all in a circumstance that reflected, what the movie was about.
Everyone who has come out here to the Philippines seems to be going through something that is affecting them profoundly, changing their perspective about the world or themselves. While the same thing is happening to Willard in the course of the film. Something is definitely happening to me and to Francis.
And that's a theme that's true to both the production of these products and the products themselves. Just as Coppola and his family joined him, along with all the cast and crew, Willard's men followed him to the end. Just as it took a team of hundreds 5 years to make SPEC OPS, just as they suffered together and celebrated together, Walker's team followed him to the end. The suffering is mutual, and it is shared. It is perhaps what makes projects like this possible. Art is shared. Now, at a personal scale, a scale you can house within the cradle of your hands, art is not suffering. It can be about suffering, it can come from suffering, it can be despite suffering, but it itself is not suffering. Of that I am certain. But at a scale undertaken by Coppola and Williams, however, I will not say that there can be no other way. I wish to believe it doesn't have to be so. But when so much is at stake, livelihoods, not just for you, but for your creative brothers and sisters too, their families in turn, you have no choice but to suffer together. To do so is to say, yes, I am right here with you, even if my eyes are hollow and my skin slough. The products they made were, and still are, brilliant. And they moved on. And while it was the parallel of these two journeys that first inspired this piece, their respective endings are what gave me the closure to finish it. Just as the endings of these stories promote introspection and self-reflection in us, Coppola and Williams stepped away from the big scale and focused on the art in the cradle of their hands. Where Coppola's contemporaries, like Lucas and Scorsese, still followed the big budget, Coppola made it clear at the end of the documentary that he felt the future of filmmaking lay in the hands of us, small scale and personal. He said that his hope was that people who normally wouldn't be making movies are going to be making them, and a lot of what he said has come to light, and even though the big budget still has its place, it's the access that draws people in. To me, that's what art is. Art is access. Williams also ends his book on a similar note, seeking to inspire the reader, talking about how the industry goal is to make money, but games as an art form still has so much further to go. He encourages us to imagine a video game that inspires us, that explores what it means to be human instead of revisiting how it feels to be powerful, to be hopeful, to imagine all of this and do it. There is something in how suffering gives you the power to no longer suffer, and the irony of it. There is something in how people who have made it then seek to make it better for the rest of us. Art is the hope that we should suffer no more.
To me, the great hope is that now these little 8mm video recorders and stuff are coming around. Some just people who normally wouldn't make movies are going to be making them, and suddenly one day some little fat girl in Ohio is going to be the new Mozart, and make a beautiful film with her little father's camera recorder. And for once, the so-called professionalism about movies will be destroyed forever, and it'll really become an art form. That's my opinion.